Gilgamesh. Gilgamesh is the archer-class servant summoned by Tokiomi Tosaka in Fate Zero. He is the legendary king of heroes, half god and half human, born from the king of Uruk and a goddess. Even before his birth, Fate had already carved out his role. He was meant to rule and was designed to connect the divine with the mortal, to guide humanity as the gods faded from the world. From the start, Gilgamesh had everything: power, knowledge, and a king's presence. But his strength came with isolation. As a child, he respected the gods, but they weren't satisfied with admiration. They wanted submission, so they made Enkidu a living weapon to humble him. But when Enkidu saw the young kid, he didn't see someone who needed punishment. That changed as Gilgamesh grew older. Once he matured, he ruled with an iron grip. He pushed his people with harsh laws and heavy burdens, while focusing only on his own desires. The gods themselves were thrown off by how far he strayed. He saw too much, felt too little, and carried the weight of a role no one else could fill. Then came his first real test against Enkidu. Their fight was intense, long, and unforgettable. He had to dig deep, even using treasures from his vault in battle for the first time. What started as a clash of pride ended in laughter. For the first time, he had an equal, and they became inseparable friends. They faced countless challenges together, from slaying divine beasts to exploring their own ideals. They pushed each other to grow, but that all came crashing down when the gods took revenge. After they defeated the Bull of Heaven, Enkidu was sentenced to die. Gilgamesh couldn't stop it. He held Enkidu as it faded away, furious that someone else paid the price for his actions. That moment changed him. He has always been untouchable, but now he felt grief. He understood death as a painful reality and he couldn't accept it, so he began a long, desperate journey to find immortality. He wandered for decades, searching for the herb that can grant eternal life. Eventually, he found it. He jarred it up and felt something he never felt before: peace and real joy. He believed he had finally won, but while resting at a spring, a snake stole the herb. That was it. All the effort, all the suffering, gone in the instant. And he laughed. It wasn't bitterness, it was clarity. He realized that immortality wasn't something to chase. What mattered wasn't avoiding death, but living with purpose. That moment was when he truly became human. He returned to Uruk, not as a tyrant, but as a king who finally understood his people. He ruled wisely and left the city in a golden age. Eventually, he passed on quietly while leaving behind a legacy that couldn't be erased. It is said that the snakes got their ability to shed their skin and start fresh because one of them stole the immortality herb and ate it. To the ancient world, the whole skin-shedding thing looked like a cheat code for eternal youth. That very first snake's shed skin supposedly turned to a fossil over time and stuck around for ages. It ended up being used by Tosaka Tokiomi as a catalyst to summon Gilgamesh as archer in the Fourth Holy Grail War. The catalyst used for his summoning might have looked like a piece of dried out mummy skin, but it was actually said to be the fossil of the first snake's shed skin, the very one that stole the herb of immortality for Gilgamesh in ancient times. Once summoned, Gilgamesh immediately takes an interest in Saber and Ryder. As fellow kings, they naturally draw his attention. Their views on kingship are completely different from his own, and that contrast fascinates him. Saber's idealism, in particular, stands out to him because he sees it as flawed. Watching those ideals fall apart is something he's eager to witness. Ryder, on the other hand, impressed him with Inoue Hetoi, his reality marble. He acknowledges his strength and decides he'll be the one to bring him down. Eventually, he grows bored with Tokiomi. There's nothing interesting about watching someone so predictable. His attention shifts to Kirei Kotomine, Tokiomi's student, whose inner conflict is much more entertaining. He sees potential in him and starts pushing him to explore his own nature. He tells Kirei to investigate the other masters and servants, to look into what drives them to chase after the Holy Grail. That nudge leads Kirei to focus on Karya Matol. He encourages this, knowing the pain and contradictions in Karya's life could help Kirei uncover his own twisted desires. When Saber uses Excalibur in battle, the memory of Enkidu resurfaces. He can't forget how Enkidu died. In that moment, he didn't just see his friend dying. He saw someone who had lived as a human, but had reached for something greater. That life, in his eyes, outshone all the treasure he had ever collected. His last words to Enkidu were filled with pride and sorrow. declaring that only he was worthy of witnessing Enkidu's fall. As Enkidu faded, only his bitter laughter remained in the mist. As the war progresses, it's revealed that Tokiomi intends to use a command spell to force Gilgamesh to kill himself so he can win the Grail. He has no intention of letting that happen. He gives Kirei permission to kill Tokiomi and forms a new contract with him. After that, he continues to follow Kirei's journey, finding enjoyment in how it unfolds. Within his long-awaited rematch when Rider happens, he wins decisively. Afterwards, he shows unexpected mercy to Waver Velvet, who no longer has the status of a master. Since Waver now only identifies as Rider's follower and chooses to live on as his king wished, he sees no reason to kill him. In his final confrontation with Saber, he stands over her and proposes that she become his queen now that she's been defeated. Before anything else happens, Kiritsugu Imiya commands Saber to destroy the Holy Grail. The explosion catches Gilgamesh in the blast, and he's drenched in the black mud spilling from the Grail. As a result, he gains a physical body and is permanently incarnated into the world. Surviving the war, he stays close to Kirei. He feeds off the energy harvested from the children orphaned by the fire to stay alive. With the world in disarray, he decides to wait for the next Holy Grail War to start his plan to cleanse humanity. To blend into society and pass time, he pulls out a potion from his vault that makes him physically younger and spends the next 10 years preparing. Hassan of 100 Faces. Hassan of 100 Faces, assassin-class servant of the Fourth Holy Grail War, isn't just one assassin, he's an entire crowd of them. This Hassan is known for his bizarre ability to split into multiple separate, fully functional individuals. His real name is Hassan-i-Sabah, one of the 19 people to ever hold the legendary title, Old Man of the Mountain. Each Hassan has had the unique take on the infamous Zabanaya, but this one earned the nickname Hassan of the 100 Faces for literally becoming many assassins in one body, or rather many bodies. Thanks to a self-inflicted dissociative identity disorder, he divided his mind into multiple personalities, each with its own specialty, 32 distinct skill sets in total. Instead of crafting a new ability through body modifications, this Hassan was born with his version of Zabanaya called Delusional Illusion. It lets him manifest up to 80 separate bodies at once, all acting as extensions of his fractured psyche. Each version has different talents. Some are spies, others are scholars, swindlers, or tactical experts. Their personalities don't sync up, which means they don't share memories, strengths, or even basic attitudes. One might follow orders like a pro, while another completely ignores them and charges in without thinking. Physically, they vary in age, gender, and even body type, but they all wear the signature skull mask of the Hassan legacy. Assassin stats are generally weak, but what makes them dangerous is presence concealment. When active, the whole swarm becomes practically invisible. As soon as they're prepared to strike, though, the concealment drops. Assassin Noble Phantasm doesn't boost raw power, but it spreads him out. The trade-off is clear. He loses individual strength, but gains reach, flexibility, and the ability to multitask like no other servant. That's why, despite being weak in direct combat, he was perfect for intel work. Kirei used them mainly for recon, sneaking them around while pretending they'd already been eliminated. This trick worked. Assassins faked his own death early in the war, and the other masters dropped their guard. Meanwhile, dozens of his other selves wandered around, gathering data unnoticed. Kiritsugu wasn't entirely fooled though. He had Maya keep tabs on Kirei. Some assassins eventually got exposed when Rider and Waver stumbled upon a few of them in Castor's hideout. One got killed, the others ran. Later, Kirei spent all his command seals to send the remaining assassins to test Rider's true strength. The result was brutal. They refused Rider's offer of wine, and in return got wiped out by his noble phantasm, Inoioi Hetaioi, which summoned an entire army to obliterate them. Assassin didn't get much time in the spotlight, but his gimmick was one of the strangest in the Holy Grail War. His ultimate wish is to become one whole person, a unified, complete identity, but before he could even take a step towards that goal, he was crushed, first out of the game, with all 100 faces falling together. Gilles de Rais. Gilles de Rais, summoned as the caster-class servant of Ryosuke Uryu, is one of the most disturbing figures in the Fourth Holy Grail War. Better known by his notorious nickname, Bluebeard, this version of Gilles is infamous for his descent into madness and his obsession with dark rituals, completely overshadowing whatever heroic legacy he once had. In life, he was a 15th century French noble and military commander. He played a major role in the Hundred Years' War, most notably fighting alongside Jeanne d'Arc. For his achievements, he was given the title of Marshal of France. At the peak of his influence, he owned vast amounts of land, even more than the Duke of Brittany, which made him a political threat. He poured his wealth into the arts and luxury, living extravagantly until his funds started to run dry. The turning point for him came after Jeanne's execution. Her death shattered his faith and drove him to seek meaning through other means. He turned to alchemy, teaming up with François Prelati to try and recover his lost fortune through occult practices. His obsession quickly shifted from money to proving that God didn't exist. He believed that if he committed enough atrocities without being punished, then divine judgment must be a lie. This mindset led him into terrifying territory. He began abducting, torturing, and killing hundreds of young boys. His crimes were so monstrous that he became the inspiration for the Bluebeard fairy tale. Even then, he wasn't arrested because of the murders. His downfall came only when people feared he might sell his land to foreign enemies. He was convicted and executed in 1440, but not for his brutality, rather for being politically inconvenient. In the Grail War, Castor's magic revolves around cruel and twisted methods. He can keep people alive in stasis while inflicting unimaginable pain. His skill set also includes basic magical functions, like concealment, divination, and item creation. One example is the bracelet he made for Ryonosuke that allowed for mind control. Castor is generally considered one of the weakest in his class when it comes to the traditional magecraft. Most of his strength comes from his noble phantasm, Prelati's spellbook, a powerful tome that acts as a bottomless mana source and gives him access to a huge range of dark spells. Using it, he can summon an endless army of monstrous fish-like creatures. While he isn't a tactical genius, this endless spawn makes him dangerous. His most terrifying creation is Gigantic Horror, a colossal demon entity formed from his summoned beast. Its size and healing ability made it nearly unstoppable. Even the combined efforts of Iskandar, Diomed, and a weakened saber couldn't bring it down. Castor was one of the last servants summoned before the war officially began. His master, Ryonosuke, was a serial killer who accidentally completed the summoning ritual using a murdered family's blood. Without a catalyst, the Grail matched him with a servant that shared his twisted personality. Gilles introduced himself as Bluebeard and quickly started drawing attention. Unlike other masters and servants, Castor and Ryonosuke didn't care about keeping a low profile. They began abducting children around Fuyuki City for their rituals. This reckless behavior alarmed Rise Kodomine, who temporarily suspended the war and offered bonus command spells to anyone who could eliminate them. Castor used his kidnapped victims as bait to lure Saber. He summoned waves of monsters to overwhelm her, but Lancer intervened using God Dag to disable Prelati's spellbook and wipe out the summoned creatures. Castor, enraged, managed to escape, returning to their destroyed lair. Ryonosuke surprisingly broke down in tears over the wreckage. Castor tried to comfort him, only to be caught off guard by Ryonosuke's claim that they were being punished by God. Ryonosuke argued that the world's violence was evidence of a god who enjoyed suffering. This philosophy fascinated Gilles, who saw it as the key to understanding everything he had lost. Fully inspired, he and his master decided to perform one final grand ritual to entertain this so-called god. For their final act, Castor merged his monsters into one enormous creature and embedded himself inside it. He unleashed it on the city to draw Saber out again. The beast's regenerative powers made it seemingly invincible, but Saber's Excalibur finally destroyed it in a massive blast. As he died, Gilles caught a glimpse of his past. The brilliance of Excalibur reminded him of his time fighting beside Jeanne d'Arc. For a moment, the fog of madness cleared. He remembered the pride he once felt, the person he used to be before everything fell apart. He shed tears just before being annihilated. He was the second servant to fall in the war. Diarmuid Oyedebna. Diarmuid Oyedebna, also called Lancer, is the servant of Kenneth El Melnoy Archibald in the Fourth Holy Grail War. He's a knight through and through, chivalrous, loyal, and dead set on winning the war with honor. He even forms a respectful rivalry with Arttoria Pendragon, hoping for a clean, fair duel to the death. He's the son of Dawn and foster son of Angus Og, first spear of the Fianna, also known far and wide as Diarmuid of the Love Spot. That nickname comes from a magical charm on his face, a spell that instantly enchants women who lay eyes on him. That gift ended up causing plenty of chaos in his life, especially when Grania, bride of Fen McCool, forced him into a relationship by casting a gaze on him during her wedding. Even though she dragged him into eloping, he stayed loyal to Finn and refused to touch her. Eventually, Finn gave up the chase, let them marry, and even gave them land and a title. But that peace didn't last. While hunting with Finn later on, he was gored by a demon boar, who was actually his half-brother reincarnated. Finn had the power to heal him using water from a nearby spring, but out of jealousy, he spilled the first 2 attempts. By the time he got it right, he was dead. His tragedy went on to inspire the legend of Lancelot and Guinevere. In the Holy Grail War, he is normally summoned as a lancer, but he actually qualifies as a saber too. His stats would be higher in the saber class, but the summoning cost would also skyrocket. His unique contract setup is worth noting. While Kyneth holds the command spells, it's his fiancée Solaui who supplies Diarmuid's magical energy. This split arrangement ends up creating more problems than solutions. His raw stats aren't standout tier, but he makes up for it with sharp tactics. He's a pain to fight for heroic spirits that rely too much on their noble phantasms. His weapons are what make him deadly in close quarters. Gal Darrig, a large crimson spear that cancels magic effects, and Gal Buya, a shorter yellow sphere that inflicts wounds that can't be healed as long as the spear is intact. He wields both with one hand each, allowing for wild and unpredictable moves most opponents can't block cleanly. This dual-wielding style removes the usual weakness of spear combat. Normally, there's a pause between thrusts due to the length of the weapon, but he covers that with quick jabs from Gal Buya. He can pressure both at long and short range. Against Arttoria though, his edge is blunted by invisible air, which conceals her sword's reach. He holds his own for a while, but can't land a finishing blow, and burns through his stamina. Eventually, he's forced to reveal both of his spears. Solaui supports his move, especially when he later teams up with Arttoria against Lancelot. She believes the two of them could have beaten Lancelot easily, but Kyneth doesn't agree. He sees Diarmuid as outclassed, and thinks that teaming up with Saber was a waste of a chance. In their rematch, Arttoria even holds back by not using her dominant hand, yet Diarmuid still can't land a single hit. Despite Kyneth dismissing him as too weak, the fight is intense, pushing both warriors beyond normal human limits. He's later forced into a battle against Castor and his endless army of monsters. With Saber, he slices through the horde, but Castor's spellbook regenerates the creatures endlessly. To break the stalemate, Saber clears a path, and he charges in for the kill. During another battle with the Fairy King Arbitage, he admits he's unable to finish the fight with his current stats, showing just how outmatched he is without backup. His mystic face, or love spot, is a problem of its own. Any woman without high magic resistance falls under his charm at a glance. Irisvel, being a homunculus with high resistance, shrugs it off, but Solaui, she spirals into obsession, and this makes him visibly uncomfortable. He's been down this road before in life, and now he's watching history repeat itself. When Grail offers extra command spells for killing Castor, Kyneth sends him to do the job. He joins Saber in taking out Castor's beast and disables the spell, blocking her full power by destroying Gal Buya. But things quickly fall apart. He later finds Soloui's severed hand and, panicked, returns to Kyneth to explain that she's still alive and transmitting mana. Kyneth doesn't care. He lashes out, accusing Diarmuid of stealing Soloui's affection, and threatens him with a new command spell. The final betrayal happens during what was meant to be his last duel with Saber. Unbeknownst to either of them, Kiritsugu had already set up a trap to eliminate both Diarmuid and Kyneth. Just as the battle hits its peak, Kiritsugu forces Kyneth to use his last command spell by taking Solaui hostage, forcing Lancer to stab himself with Gal Darrig. Realizing he was sacrificed again for someone else's agenda, Diarmuid dies furious. His last moments are spent cursing the Grail, his master, Solaui, Saber, Kiritsugu, and the entire world for robbing him of his wish, again. Lancelot. Lancelot, summoned under the Berserker class by Karya Mato, is one of the most fearsome servants in the Fourth Holy Grail War. Known as the Knight of the Lake, he was once hailed as the strongest of the Knights of the Round Table and a symbol of loyalty and honor. But in this war, he's summoned in madness, consumed by regret, guilt, and unresolved grief over his past. Originally born in France, Lancelot lost his parents at a young age and was raised by the Lady of the Lake, Vivienne, earning him his famous title. He didn't believe the stories about the King of Knights, but that changed the moment he saw King Arthur fighting on the battlefield. He was struck by the sight of a young monarch leading with unwavering resolve. That encounter shaped his admiration and loyalty towards her. Lancelot joined the Round Table and gained fame for his numerous heroic feats. One of his most memorable moments was when he entered a horse race in disguise to defend a friend's honor, and still won despite being ambushed mid-event. But cracks started forming when he saw how Arthur's role as king kept him from understanding human emotions. Lancelot grew closer to King Arthur's wife, Guinevere. Wanting to ease her burden, they eventually fell into an affair. That affair led him to discover the king's secret, that she was a woman named Arttoria and forced to hide her identity and marry Guinevere to uphold the image of a stable kingdom. Guinevere also sacrificed her personal happiness to protect that image. But their affair got exposed by Agravain, and Guinevere was sentenced to execution. He tried to save her, killing several fellow knights, including Gareth and Gaheris. This betrayal shattered the unity of the Round Table, ignited civil war, and drove Britain into ruin. Despite everything, Arttoria forgave him. After Artoria's death, he was left broken and spiraled into madness. This mental state is what caused him to be summoned as Berserker. His abilities were already top tier when he was alive, but under mad enhancement, his stats shot through the roof, at the cost of his sanity. He couldn't speak or think properly, but he became a near unstoppable force. His physical prowess alone allowed him to match even Archer in combat. His noble phantasm, Knight of Order, lets him turn any object he touches into a weapon on par with a noble phantasm, as long as it can be recognized as a weapon. This lets him wield anything from ancient relics to submachine guns like their divine armaments. However, Lancer's God Direg, it was a direct counter to him, canceling the magical enhancements on his stolen weapons. He also has For Someone's Glory, which lets him conceal his identity and parameters. It could have allowed him to impersonate other heroic spirits, but under mad enhancement, this ability was restricted unless forced by a command spell. Curia once used this to have him impersonate Ryder and kidnap Irisvel von Eisburn. His true noble phantasm is Arendite, a divine weapon on par with Excalibur. When activated, it seals his other abilities, but dramatically boosts his combat power. It also deals bonus damage to enemies with the Dragon attribute. At full power, he becomes a one-man army, unmatched in close combat. During the war, his madness made him unpredictable and dangerous. In one early clash, he intercepted weapons from Archer's Gate of Babylon and used them against their owner. Archer had to retreat, but Karya failed to recall his Berserker, leading Lancelot to attack Saber until Lancer stepped in. The fight stopped only when Ryder intervened, forcing Berserker and Lancer to back down. In the battle against Castor, he stole an F-15 fighter jet and used it as a noble phantasm, launching into an aerial battle with Archer. But as soon as he saw Saber, he dropped everything and dove in to attack her instead. This obsession kept sabotaging his own battles. Later on, when fulfilling Curia's duel with Kyrie Kodomine, he disguised himself as Ryder and successfully kidnapped Irisvel. This move caught Saber off guard and let Berserker slip away undetected. On the final night of the war, Berserker fought Saber again, this time wielding modern firearms as noble phantasms. Saber managed to disarm him and land a hit, but he caught her blade barehanded, recognizing Excalibur's true form. This confirmed her suspicions. She finally realized who he was. Saber asked him to reveal his identity, and he responded by donning Arendite. With his helmet destroyed in the process, Saber was face to face with the knight she once called a friend. Overwhelmed by guilt, she hesitated. Lancelot, still consumed by regret, beat her down. He stopped just before delivering the final blow, not because he chose to, but because Karya had run out of magical energy. He froze, unable to keep fighting. Saber took the opportunity and struck him down with Excalibur. Before fading, he regained his sanity, and admitted he couldn't forgive himself because she forgave him. He wanted punishment, not mercy. Dying in her arms, he faded as the fifth servant to fall in the war. Iskandar. Iskandar, also known as Ryder, is the servant of Waver Velvet in the Fourth Holy Grail War. Behind the title is none other than Alexander the Great, called Iskandar in his adult form. This is the legendary king of conquerors himself, the same guy who stormed through the ancient world like it was his personal playground. Born a prince of Macedonia in the 4th century BC, he grew up with big ideas, thanks in part to his mother, Olympias, who filled his head with heroic myths and convinced him he was the son of Zeus. Smart, charming, and unusually pretty, he caught the eye of scholars like Aristotle and showed early talent in everything from philosophy to warfare. He didn't like being boxed in, always keeping an open mind. Even as a kid, he seemed like someone destined for something bigger. Eventually, He tackled the famous Gordian knot by skipping the riddle and just cutting the thing with his sword. He also claimed the divine bulls once dedicated to Zeus and hooked him up to his chariot. At age 20, he took the throne of Macedonia, but he didn't stop there. He quickly took over nearby territories, became the leader of Corinth, and set his sights east towards Persia. Word of his army's power traveled ahead of him, and when he finally arrived, his actions surprised everyone. Instead of butchering conquered people, he spared them and laid out his dream, to reach the edge of the world and to see the ocean with his own eyes. People called him crazy, but many were inspired enough to join his cause. His battles in Persia were legendary, especially against Darius III and the elite 10,000 immortals. From Persia, his campaign rushed through Egypt, India, and beyond. His forces endured brutal deserts, icy mountains, and hostile tribes with unfamiliar tactics. They fought non-stop but kept their spirits high, chasing the dream of seeing that distant sea. Even though many died along the way, they kept going. In just 10 years, Alexander built the largest empire the world had ever seen and laid the groundwork for what would be called the Hellenistic civilization. But by 33, he was dead. His death led to the empire's collapse. After his death, his son was held captive and his generals turned on each other. In the Fate universe, Iskandar stands out as a top-tier heroic spirit. His powers took a hit because Waver Velvet, his master, wasn't exactly the best magus around. Even so, his strength still outclassed many others. One look at him was enough to make Waver freeze up. He gave off that undeniable alpha energy. His main weapon is the Sword of Kypriotus, a spatha with a lion-themed hilt. While not a noble phantasm, it's still a solid weapon. His magic resistance can cancel basic spells, but it's not enough to go head-to-head with a powerful caster, without some kind of plan. That's why Waver didn't want to charge into caster's territory without thinking it through. As a rider-class servant, Iskandar can ride almost anything, including creatures at the level of phantasmal species and divine beasts, though dragons are off limits. He uses several mounts, including the legendary war chariot Gordius Wheel and his trusted horse Bucephalus. His first noble phantasm, Via Exponatio, uses Gordius Wheel chariot in a trampling attack that hits twice, once with hooves and then again with the wheels. It also packs some lightning damage, which is somewhat a nod to Zeus. If the opponent can't resist, the damage ramps up, but Ryder's real ace is Inioi Heterioi, a reality marble that summons his former soldiers, thousands of them, each a heroic spirit with basic independence. They can stick around for up to 30 turns, and they don't need a master. It's basically an army in your pocket. Waver summoned Ryder using a stolen relic, his old mantle, which belonged to Lord Meloi. Waver wanted to prove his worth, and summoning Iskandar was his way of showing he wasn't just some average student. Despite his overwhelming presence, Iskandar wasn't interested in the Grail for power. He was more into experiencing the world again, especially now that it has changed so much. He was curious about modern life, eager to explore it all. He even hosted a meeting at Iceburn Castle with the other servant kings to talk about their goals. There, he made it clear that he didn't want the Grail to conquer the world. He wanted to be reborn as a real human, free from the servant system. He clashed with Saber during that meeting, criticizing her wish to rewrite history and calling her unfit to be a king. He didn't hold back either. He made it clear he saw her as just a girl with no real understanding of kingship. Later, he fought alongside Saber against Castor. Before his final battle, he used the Gordius Wheel against Saber, but Excalibur blew it up. He held back on using Inioi Heteroi and saving it for his last stand against Archer. During that final fight on the bridge, he went all in. He tried to convince Archer to join forces, arguing that with his army and Archer's arsenal, they could take the world. Archer shot him down, saying he'd never accept another king. Ryder summoned his army and charged, but Archer tore through half of it with Enuma Elish. The reality marble collapsed, and with the rest of his forces gone, Ryder charged alone. As he closed in, he got caught by Enkidu and was finished off by Ea. Arttoria Pendragon. Arttoria Pendragon, known by her class name Saber, served as Kirisugu Emiya's servant during the Fourth Holy Grail War. Most people know her as the legendary King Arthur, though history got the gender completely wrong. She's the once and future King of Britain, wielding first Caliburn and later the famous Excalibur alongside Avalon from Lady of the Lake. The Arthur legend has real roots. Arthur existed as Dux Bellorum, a war leader who united 12 kings of northern England against Scottish and Pictish invasions. Britain had ancient cursed energy flowing through it, and Uther Pendragon was its last keeper. He worked with Merlin to create human-dragon hybrid child as a successor. Merlin prophesied that white and red dragons would battle, with Britain eventually united by a great king. Arttoria was created as the red dragon to oppose Vortigern, the white dragon incarnate who wanted to destroy Britain before the Age of Man arrived. Born during the collapse of the Western Roman Empire, Arttoria entered a world of complete chaos. Without Rome's protection, Britain split into warring kingdoms that started the Dark Ages. Born to Uther and blue-eyed Igraine, she wasn't the male heir Uther desperately wanted. Since she couldn't be his official successor, Merlin took charge of raising her, thrilled because gender never mattered for the prophecy. She got shipped to Sir Ector, who raised her alongside his son Kay. Growing up on coastal green hills, she trained relentlessly, believing only a king could save a dying country. Going by Artorius, she pretended to be male, with only Merlin and her adopted family knowing the truth. Kay became her beloved brother, and though she was better at swordsmanship, he has always won fights through pure stubbornness. Merlin taught her in dreams, so even sleep brought no rest. When Prophecy Day arrived, knights expected jousting tournaments to pick the new king. Instead, they found a sword and a stone, reading, "Whosoever pulleth out this sword of the stone is rightwise king born of England." Everyone failed to pull it out. While knights started jousting, Arttoria approached the abandoned stone. Merlin warned her that grabbing the stone would end her humanity forever. She already accepted this. Becoming king meant no longer being human. She understood kings kill everyone to protect everyone, a terrifying truth that kept her awake countless nights. The sword came out naturally. Light filled the area, and she became something beyond human. She stopped aging at 15. For 10 years, she built strength and gathered followers, including Gawain. After slaying usurper Vortigern in Londinium with Rhongomeniad, she got crowned King of Britain. She built Camelot and Londinium's ruins and assembled the Knights of the Round Table. Her frozen aging made knights nervous, but most praised their master's divine immortality. She became a war god, leading from the front with dragon-like power. 10 years and 12 battles brought nothing but victory. The heir problem got solved when Merlin temporarily gave her male anatomy. Her half-sister, Morgan, enchanted her, took some of Arttoria's sperm, developed it with her ovaries, and created Mordred, a homunculus clone. Mordred grew fast, joined the Round Table, and worshipped her father while hiding her identity. When Mordred revealed her heritage and claimed succession rights, Arttoria completely rejected her. This transformed Mordred's love into burning hatred. Arttoria married Guinevere out of obligation, but Guinevere and Lancelot truly loved each other. Since Arttoria had hidden her gender, Guinevere carried this burden her entire life, while Lancelot supported both from the shadows. Only Uther, Merlin, and Kay knew her true identity. She covered herself in steel armor to seal this secret. Her fairy-granted immortality meant nobody questioned her small frame or feminine features. She became the perfect king, fair, selfless, always at the front lines, making correct choices. But perfection became her downfall. Knights murmured that King Arthur does not understand human feelings. Several reputable knights left Camelot, believing emotionless humans cannot rule others. After her victory at Badon Hill brought brief peace, everything unraveled when traitors revealed Lancelot and Guinevere's affair. She wrote pardons and gave blessings, but Lancelot fled in fear. While fighting border invasions, someone stole Excalibur's scabbard. She returned to find Britain torn by civil war. Despite efforts to restore peace, she suffered mortal wounds from Mordred during the Battle of Camlan. Staring at countless dead countrymen, she regretted her life as king. She made a deal with the Counterforce to serve as a counter-guardian after death for a chance to seek the Holy Grail and save her country. This froze her in time on Camlan Hill, doomed to be summoned endlessly across all eras pursuing the Grail. Before dying, she ordered Bedivere to return Excalibur to Lady of the Lake. Legend says fairies carried her to Avalon, where she'll return to save Britain. Her reign lasted 10 years, dying at 35 but looking 15. As a servant, Arttoria ranks as the strongest saber-class heroic spirit. Born with dragon magical energy, her body functions like a magical factory, generating power through breathing. Her dragon blood grants her the highest magic resistance amongst servants, neutralizing grand magic and resisting command spells. Her fighting style centers on mana burst, infusing weapons and body with magical energy for power boosts. She possesses instinct, identifying the best combat actions like a sixth sense. Her noble phantasms include invisible air, concealing her sword with compressed wind, and Excalibur, a divine construct converting mana into destructive light beams, though full power remains locked behind 13 restraints. During the Fourth Holy Grail War, Kiritsugu summoned her using Avalon as a catalyst, though he kept this detail secret from her. She arrived in Fuyuki with Irisvale by plane since her unique status prevented dematerialization. The plan was simple. Irisvale would act as her public master, while Kiritsugu operated from the shadows, using his assassination methods. Her first real battle came against Lancer that same night. Despite their skills being fairly matched, Lancer's cursed spear, Galbuya, left a wound on her left hand that refused to heal, and prevented her using Excalibur properly. This handicap would plague her throughout most of the war. Their duel got interrupted when Ryder showed up on his chariot, boldly declaring his superiority and inviting both to join his army. Arttoria firmly refused, claiming her own kingship as reason enough to never bow to another. Then, Archer arrived, smugly announcing that his rule surpassed everyone else's, followed by Berserker, who seemed oddly fixated on her after clashing with Archer. Things got chaotic when a command spell forced Lancer to team up with Berserker to kill her. Ryder intervened to stop this mess, insisting she and Lancer should finish their proper duel later. All the servants retreated without further bloodshed. On their way to Iceburn Castle, she and Isvale encountered the complete unhinged caster. This psychopath immediately mistook her for Jeanne d'Arc due to some superficial resemblance and wouldn't listen to reason. She managed to drive him off, but he promised to save her soul from God's curse, which was definitely not reassuring. Kiritsugu's attempt to assassinate Lancer's master, Kanif, triggered separate attacks on their castle from both Kanif and Caster. This is where Arttoria started getting seriously disgusted with Kiritsugu's methods. Here she was, planning an honorable duel with Lancer, and her master was off trying to murder his opponent's master instead. Even worse, Kiritsugu wanted to avoid fighting Caster entirely and let someone else deal with him. Caster showed up first and immediately started his psychological warfare by slaughtering a bunch of children right in front of her. Arttoria charged into battle, but found herself completely stymied by his noble phantasm, Prelati's spellbook. She could massacre his summoned monsters all day, but the curse wound on her hand prevented her from closing the distance to Caster himself. Lancer arrived during this mess, sent by Kanif to deal with her while his master handled Kiritsugu. Instead of fighting her while she was handicapped, Lancer decided to help out of honor for their promised duel. Acting as her left hand, they worked together brilliantly. She used invisible air to create a slipstream that let Lancer charge straight through the monster horde and force Caster to retreat. After the battle, Lancer sensed Kanif was in serious danger and had to leave. Their chivalrous moment was interrupted when Irisvale nearly died from wounds inflicted by Kirei Kotomine. Arttoria unknowingly saved her by channeling energy into Avalon, though she had no idea what was happening. With Kiritsugu off doing his lone wolf thing, she and Irisvale were left alone in the castle. Their peace got shattered when Ryder rode up on his Gordius wheel, but instead of fighting, he proposed something unprecedented, a battle without bloodshed. This became the legendary King's Banquet. Ryder had somehow convinced Archer to join them for what turned into a philosophical debate over wine about different approaches to kingship. Arttoria revealed her deepest desire, using the Holy Grail to change history and prevent her country's destruction. Both Ryder and Archer basically told her that this was wrong, with Ryder particularly harsh about how she never understood her people's hearts. On the war's final day, she finally faced Berserker in single combat. Something felt familiar about this opponent. He caught Excalibur despite his invisibility, clearly knowing her identity from their past lives. When she demanded he reveal himself, Berserker drew Arendite and dispelled his black fog. This revelation hit her like a truck. Berserker was Sir Lancelot, her most trusted knight and closest friend. Ryder's earlier words about not understanding people's hearts came flooding back as she realized Lancelot's guilt and self-hatred had driven him completely insane. The man who had loved Guinevere and supported her from the shadows was now trying to kill her in a Berserker rage. As Karya's magical energy ran out, Berserker's attack faltered, and she seized the moment to stab him. She apologized, saying she wanted the Holy Grail to change the past and save him too. In his final moments, Berserker regained his sanity and begged her to punish him because he couldn't forgive himself for falling in love with the queen. As he faded away, she wanted to tell him that he had been a loyal knight, but couldn't find the right words. His last thoughts were that she was the greatest king for those who served her. Finally reaching the Holy Grail, she found Archer waiting for her. The ancient king casually proposed marriage and effortlessly overpowered her when she refused. With the Grail right there in front of her, salvation seemed within reach. Then Kiritsugu arrived, and she desperately asked him to use his command seals to give her power to defeat Archer and claim the Grail. Instead, in the most crushing betrayal possible, he used his final 2 command seals to order her to destroy the very thing she fought so hard to obtain. Forced to use Excalibur against her will, she destroyed the Grail's vessel, but its corrupted contents spilled out anyway. The black mud raised the land permanently and killed almost everyone it touched, creating the disaster that would haunt Fuyuki for years to come. With the Grail destroyed and unable to maintain her physical form, she was sent back to the battlefield of Camlan. The words of Lancelot and Ryder echoed in her mind as she realized her quest had failed completely. She was the 6th and final servant to die in the 4th Holy Grail War, with her only remaining wish being to undo her life so she would never become king.